Now we get to introduce our other main character for this, and that is Ross Perot.
That's H. Ross Perot to you.
Yes.
Get his name right.
One of the most vocal POW advocates. He was not a part of the Nixon administration, but he worked closely with the Nixon administration, sort of going above and beyond even what they asked him to. For those who are not familiar, some people might call Ross Perot an eccentric businessman, but most people just think he was
crazy.
But Perot from the 70s through the 90s would sponsor traveling exhibits of what he imagined POW camps to look like, where they would dress up mannequins and like display them in state houses, to show like what the poor conditions that the soldiers were living in. But we get after the war ends, we get sort of the broader Vietnam syndrome. I don't know if you want to explain that.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it more as the episode goes. But just, I mean, I think one through line here, just to really hammer home that you're already doing a great job making sure we're including, is also how much I think I would argue for the first time, at least since the Civil War, which is its own crazy complicated thing, of a foreign war for the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The first time that this is really a war where it's more about the debates over the legacy and the memory than even about the war era itself. Obviously, there are all sorts of debates during the war, but as we've been laying out here, it becomes even more a question of what its legacies are going to be and how we're going to remember it. And that starts immediately, and it starts through that kind of concept. It starts through all kinds of cultural representations in the final years after, and then only builds into the 80s and into the 90s. So just the idea that it's this really interesting reframing of what a war is to be what it continues to be, what the tales of it are, what the legacies of it are. So, and I think Vietnam Syndrome is a really early example of people starting to ask that question of what is going to linger here rather than just what happened.
You just heard a clip from the most recent episode of the History on Film podcast. For more of this episode and access to all our episodes, search for the History on Film podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Pandora. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel here on YouTube. Thanks for listening.